Hey Emily, good morning. How are you doing, girl? Um, so today is the 7th of January 2019. Wow, I'm gonna have to get used to saying 2019. I've been saying 2019 for about 7 days now, and I'm still finding it a little bit of a struggle to remind myself to say it instead of 2018. 2018 just rolls off the lips, right? It just rolls off the tongue. Whereas 2019 is a little odd and strange. And one of these days it's going to be 2020. I cannot believe it. Wow. That's phenomenal. 2020. So that's just around the corner. And but here this year we get to savor 2019 every single day of 2019 as it shows up for us. And I mean, how lucky are we? So today is Monday, and I suppose that this morning you're preparing to go to high school, your freshman high school class, your second semester in high school. Just you know, you know, interestingly enough, that makes me proud to know that you're going to school today, and I'm just so pleased by it. This idea that, oh yeah, my daughter is going to school and she's going to learn stuff from her teachers and she's going to reconnect with her friends. And I can imagine the anticipation that you feel right now about how what what maybe new teachers you're going to see, maybe what old familiar teachers you're going to see, what friends you're going to meet today, and maybe the lunch that you're going to have, and the recess that you'll have, and how you'll get to spend that time doing whatever it is you want to do. That pleases me as a father. It pleases me. I'm glad to hear it. I like to hear that my kid is going to school. It makes me feel proud. It makes me feel happy. There are a lot of other kids who aren't going to school right now. They're in countries that are undergoing some sort of strife, and or maybe there are children who are poor. Maybe they're disabled. Maybe they have mental disabilities or physical disabilities that prevent them from going to school. There are a lot of kids that go to school online now because they've got maybe parents that are really strict about what friends they can have or what influences they might have. And there are a lot of kids who are struggling, who wish that they could go to school but can't. For example, kids who have cancer, right? Kids who have heart problems or terrible diseases. Maybe kids that just got in an accident last night, right? Maybe they got in a car accident with their parents, or maybe maybe they're kids that just died in their sleep last night. You know, but that isn't the case for me. I mean, the case is that you're going to school, and it's the case for you too. And I mean, I just feel so grateful for it all. So grateful about what's happening. And I guess that's one thing I wanted to talk about today. I wanted to talk about gratitude and how critically important it is in life to be grateful. And you may not even give this idea much thought. In fact, I know it's taken me personally years and years and years to appreciate just how important having an attitude of gratitude is. And this is not something to be shaken off or taken lightly. Gratitude is a deep, deep, deep necessity for human beings. It's almost a biologically deep need, a biologically deep need. And here's why. Our minds, our brains have been have developed over the millennia to pay special attention to all the negative things that happen into our lives, all the threats that surround us. Our mind is exceedingly good at analyzing the problems that we have and finding solutions. And, over the millennia, our brains have just molded themselves in this shape to sort of solve problems, right? The problems of everyday living. The problem is that while problem solving is fantastic for our survival as a species and is wonderful for transmitting our DNA down genetic lines from child to child through our offspring, it is terrible for happiness and enjoyment in life. It's not a trait that helps one live a happy life. It just isn't. It does allow us to eke out survival, to scrape our survival on this dusty planet of ours. But as for creating enjoyment and peace and satisfaction, our brains just are not built to do that job. And that's why it's what I call even biologically important that we develop habits of gratitude. And what I mean by that is, the project of civilization and society has largely solved a lot of the big problems that we face. And we're not helped by our prehistoric minds. We're not helped by focusing on every change in our life as if a lion is approaching and we're in mortal danger, or a mammoth is on its way. Our human brains just really are not fit for survival in the present modern day moment. I think we still all struggle with problems related to thinking dark thoughts, painful thoughts, hurting thoughts. It's unnecessary right now. It's unnecessary to have seriously dark thoughts and painful thoughts. It's just not necessary. Things are going pretty well. So how do we do that? Well, we develop gratitude through habit. Really, it's a habit of mind. It takes thoughtfulness. The more we do it, the better we get. The better we get from how we've gotten. It's like a continual upward cycle. And the opposite can be equally true. If you focus on the negative, things that give you pain, things that make you hurt, you'll also fall into a negative spiral. So there's no standing still when it comes to the problem of gratitude. You're either making progress or you're falling behind. And every thought you have is a point where you can start again, when you could start anew. And I encourage you to develop a habit of gratitude somehow, through some kind of physical, visible action, some kind of positive thinking technique, to reinforce gratitude in your life. I think it's, like I mentioned, biologically essential to develop. And thankfully, there are a lot of aspects of our culture that help protect and preserve this virtue of gratefulness. But there are also a lot of aspects of our culture that tear down that virtue. And it's easy to get sucked into them. It's this idea of needing to grasp, this grasping. Commercial advertising is a really good example. How it creates the need to have a television set or the fastest computer. There's a lot of benefit to that system as well. But there's an unintentional problem that's created, and that is that commercial advertising can create discontent, dissatisfaction. The internet does that through things that are, there's the fear of missing out, FOMO, right? A lot of people experience that when they look at Facebook, photographs on Facebook or Instagram, right? And so, I think we're continually assaulted. I don't know if that's the right word, but we're continually confronted with the idea that somehow things aren't right, that our dissatisfaction is justified. So anyway, I wanted to give you at least some idea of how I think about gratitude and how I try to help myself be more grateful. And how I do it is primarily these days through the use of imagery. Imagery is incredibly important. Creating imagery relating to gratitude can help you sort of identify with what you're grateful for in a more concrete way. Instead of just making statements, grateful statements, if you can visualize in your mind images about what's good in your life and what you're looking forward to, that imagery is critically important to developing internal motivation and for making your life, these ideas, more concrete. So I do actually use a kind of Venn diagram in my own internal visualizations, and the Venn diagram looks like the symbol of Mickey Mouse. Mickey Mouse has those three circles, right? There's the circle of his face, and then there's the left and right circle of his ears just above his face. And so it's basically three circles, and it's that Mickey Mouse shape is my kind of Venn diagram, and here's the explanation. The face, the round shape, I use plus symbols and minus symbols. A plus symbol is a symbol of something that I'm grateful for, and a minus symbol is something that I don't know, is a bad thing, so to speak. There's a good thing, a positive thing, which is just a plus symbol, and then a minus thing, which is a minus symbol, which is a minus thing. So I'm thinking about Mickey Mouse's head. Inside that circle, there are pluses and minuses. That head represents the things that are present in my life, right? In my life, presently, there are good things and bad things about what's going on in the moment. And now, the right ear, the upper right ear, that is all the things that I long for. Those are the things that I crave for in my future. And those are all positive things, right? And so just to summarize, in Mickey's head, there are both negative and positive symbols, which is the present. And then in the upper right-hand ear, there are all the positive things that I could have that I don't have, right? These are the things that I want. And I long for these things, all these positive things that I'm looking forward to in my future. I want to reach out and grab those positive things, but right now they're out of reach. I'm separate from them. And then the other ear, the left ear, that's all the negative things that I don't have. So I don't have cancer. I don't have AIDS. Those are negative things generally. I don't have those. And I'm separated from those things. I'm so grateful. I'm grateful for the separation, that I don't have those problems. So this is where it starts. So in my present life, I've got pluses and minuses, and so for me, it's all about visualizing what I really appreciate in the moment right now. So I'm trying, when I think about the pluses in Mickey's head, I'm trying to focus more intently on the good things that I've got. For example, I've got a body with 1 million parts, and all those parts are working just fine. That is something to be grateful for. I mean, that's a million pluses right there. Every part, every one of those million parts, that's a part that's working for me and helping me enjoy my life and live it to its potential. There are a lot of other wonderful things that I've got going in my life. Amazing access to computer technology, or the use of computer technology, access to all the knowledge in the world, all the books in the world, all the music in the world through various internet services. I've even got electronic gadgets that give me access to all the video games in the world. These are amazing pluses that I have in my life right now. Okay. And now there are pluses that I don't have in my life. There are things that I want, but I just don't have. I guess one of the primary things is for you, Em, as you know, there is some separation between us right now. And I would like to close the gap, to close the distance between us. And so, that's something that's positive that I long for. I want more connection with you. And now and here's another aspect of my metaphor of using the Mickey face. It may be true that I don't have the connection that I long for, but I do have other things. There are hidden gifts that have developed as the result of the separation between you and I. And I actually show that as sort of like connectors, are connector plus signs between Mickey's head and the ear. So there are those connector plus signs. And hidden gifts that are related to our separation for me are making regular videos. I mean, this is really positive for me. I get to develop my legacy. I get to develop my own self through these video journals. That's a positive thing. Also, writing letters. I get to develop ways of writing letters. That's a very beneficial habit to have. So that's a plus that's connected to our separation. And then there are other things. First of all, I got freedom. I've got freedom to spend my time and my money the way I want to, my disposable income the way I want to. And that, ordinarily I wouldn't necessarily have as much freedom if we were more connected. And so because I've got more freedom, I've got that benefit. So let's see, there are other hidden gifts related to our separation. Number one, I'm developing virtues and strengths in my personality, like patience. And I'm also developing better communication skills. I'm a lot more focused on using gentle words and writing in a gentle way and speaking in a gentle way. So that's another hidden gift that our separation has brought me. So those are all plus symbols that I can imagine. So there's all the good things in my life. And yeah, I've got some longing that I have. But there are virtues that I'm developing and strengths that I'm developing as a result of this separation or this longing. Okay, so let's think a little bit more about, let's say the negative things that I don't have. Let's say some of the minus signs that I don't have, that I'm separated from. These are in Mickey's left ear, right? Mickey's left ear has got all kinds of minus symbols. They're indicators of the things that are bad that are not in my life. And that is itself is something to be grateful for. Cancer is a really good example. I don't have cancer. Cancer is one of those negative symbols in Mickey's left ear. I'm so grateful. I can be happy that I don't have that in my life. I can be grateful that I don't have AIDS. I don't have kidney disease. I'm not on dialysis. I mean, just think of all the negative things that could be happening to me that aren't. I'm alive. I'm not dead. Being dead is not in my life right now. That's fantastic. Being a quadriplegic, again, not in my life right now. I don't have any strange deformities, right? I don't have Ebola, right? I don't have the flu right now. I'm not sick right now. There are a lot of things that, I'm not injured, right? And I'm not in the hospital. That would be a negative thing that's not in my life. So I could just go on, and I could be grateful that all those negative things are not in my life. Wow. So I'm grateful for those. So and then what I could do is I can more fully explore one of those negative signs. Now, I mentioned lately I don't have kidney disease, which means I'm not on dialysis. Now, that's something to be grateful for. But I can explore and expand upon me not being in dialysis right now. For example, I can drink as much water as I want to drink. People on dialysis, because their kidneys don't work, they can't drink as much water as they want because their kidneys can't filter out the water. So, but I can drink as much water as I want because I'm not on dialysis. Wow. And what is some other people on dialysis have to watch their potassium levels, but I can eat as much potassium as I want because I'm not on dialysis. So I can further explore the benefits of not being on dialysis. What else can I benefit from not? I don't need to create a GoFundMe page to pay for my dialysis treatment. I don't need to find kidney donors because I don't need a kidney. Do you see how I'm further elaborating on this idea of me not being on dialysis? And the more I elaborate on it, like, I don't have to go to my dialysis appointment 3 times a week or twice a week. I don't have to sit near the dialysis machine for 4 hours to cleanse my blood, right? Like, oh, wow, that's even more than I'm grateful for. So, do you notice how I'm exploring in a very systematic way what's going on through these pluses and minuses, right? Negative facts, positive facts, So, I think that is a very useful illustration. And what's really great is that every time I see a cross, I get triggered by that symbol to think of an additional thing that any good facts that I can consider. And the fact is, there are a lot of crosses incidentally around in my environment. A lot of things are at 90-degree angles to other things. And when I recognize a cross-like symbol, I think of all the plus facts, all the benefits that I get to enjoy in my life right now. And so, basically my external environment triggers me to consider even more ideas, more things that I might be grateful for. So I hope that illustration helps you and those metaphors help you. I hope that technique helps you. I know it helps me sort of keep my mind on gratitude, and it helps me develop basically a strategy, right? It's about being grateful for what's in my life now. It's about recognizing that I am separate from some of the things that I want, but there is a connection there, and that is the virtues and strengths that I develop. Excuse me. And that is the virtues and strengths that I develop as a result of being separated from what I want. And then last, it's the recognition that I'm separate from all the negative facts that I'm separate from, and exploring and enjoying the fact that I don't have those in my life right now, and how grateful I am that that's the case. So those are this little drawing, this imagery work can be really helpful in reminding me to be grateful. Anyway, speaking of being grateful about stuff, yesterday I was working on my video game system, and you might be asking yourself, "What? I didn't know my dad played video games." And it's true, I really don't play video games, but I do have access to my Game Boy. What is my Game Boy SP? My Game Boy Advanced SP. Now, you probably don't even know about this gadget, but when I grew up in a world of video game rooms. These are rooms devoted to big box cabinets of video games back in the 1980s. Back in the mostly the 1980s, the late 1980s and the early 1990s. It was a big deal to kids my age because we loved playing video games. But the problem was we didn't have cars to travel out to these video game rooms that were scattered across the city. And it wasn't until the video game home consoles were developed that I began to play a lot of video games as a kid. Thankfully, they came around pretty quickly, and I was only in my maybe early teens, or maybe 10, 11, 12 years old when I started playing video games regularly on consoles like the ColecoVision, the Nintendo, and the Super Nintendo. But the problem with the video game consoles is that they were locked into your home television set, and you couldn't carry them around. And it was only until the Game Boy was developed, and the Game Boy Color after that, the Game Boy Advanced, then the Game Boy SP were developed, that we could actually transport our video games around. So anyway, I do play video games on rare occasion, but here's the thing. The video games that I enjoy playing are the old classics. Games that you may not even know exist. They are games such as Space Invaders, Miss Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, Super Mario Brothers, Asteroids, Galaga. These are the video games that I love, the video games that I could, if I had the availability, I could play all the time. For example, Tetris is a game that I really, really love. And now you might think, you can play video games anytime, anywhere, any place on your smartphone. Well, yeah, it's not that great. Turns out it's nice to have a little console like this devoted to video game playing itself. Anyway, I love my Game Boy Advance SP. I'm going to be carrying it around with me in my book bag. And I don't know. I want to play Metroid. I want to play my Zelda. I want to play my, all these awesome games. Zaxxon. I want to play Zaxxon. You probably don't even know what that is. Missile Command, Tempest. Anyway, there's just a whole library of old classic games that your dad loves to play, and I'm grateful to have access to those video games through that console. Which, by the way, pretty much I would guess there might be even nobody that you know that plays video games using this console. They probably all play using the Nintendo Switch now, or who knows? There may be some of your friends that actually have Game Boys. It's possible. But I think a lot of people these days play video games with their smartphones, or they play video games with their Xbox or PlayStation 4s. Anyway, so one thing I thought that we could do is the next segment is that we could do a little bit of reading about geology in our geology textbook today. And I figured I'd read a little excerpt from my textbook titled The Geologic Work of Groundwater. And we're going to talk about caverns. So the reason I chose this selection out of my geology textbook is because, Emily, if you remember, you've been to Carlsbad Caverns in southern New Mexico. And that trip that we took together with your mom is, for me, a red letter date in the sense that it was very significant, very notable. I remember a lot of details about that trip. And that was basically one of the finest, most enjoyable memories that I have of you as a child. And that is the time that we all went to Carlsbad Caverns. Now, you may not even remember it, but I hope you do. And we also have multiple photographs that I took and preserved on DVD, or I guess we preserved them on CD-ROM, and you've got that package in your mom's home. And anyway, we had a lot of fun at Carlsbad Caverns, walking through the caverns and listening to the pre-recorded narration through the caverns. And I don't know, we had a good time. I took a lot of wonderful pictures, and I had a blast with you down in the caves. And so let's read a little bit about caverns and the geologic work of groundwater. Here we go. Groundwater dissolves rock. This fact is key to understanding how caverns and sinkholes form, because soluble rocks, especially limestone, underlie millions of square kilometers of Earth's surface. It is here that the groundwater carries on its important role as an erosional agent. Limestone is nearly insoluble in pure water, but is quite easily dissolved by water containing small quantities of carbonic acid. And most groundwater contains this acid. It forms because rainwater readily dissolves carbon dioxide from the air and from decaying plants. Therefore, when groundwater comes in contact with limestone, the carbonic acid reacts with the calcite, calcium carbonate, in the rocks to form calcium bicarbonate, a soluble material that is then carried away in solution. Caverns. The most spectacular results of groundwater's erosional handiwork are limestone caverns. In the United States alone, about 17,000 caves have been discovered, and more are being formed or found every year. Although most are relatively small, some have spectacular dimensions. Mammoth Cave in Kentucky and Carlsbad Caverns in southeastern New Mexico are famous examples. The Mammoth Cave system is the most extensive in the world, with more than 540 kilometers. That's 335 miles of interconnected passages. The dimensions at Carlsbad Caverns are impressive in a different way. Here we find the largest and perhaps most spectacular single chamber. The big room at Carlsbad Caverns has an area equivalent to 15 to 14 football fields and enough height to accommodate the U.S. Capitol building. Cavern development. Most caverns are created at just or below the water table, in the zone of saturation. Here, acidic groundwater follows lines of weakness in the rock, such as joints and bedding planes. As time passes, the dissolving process slowly creates cavities and gradually enlarges them into caverns. Material that is dissolved by the groundwater is essentially discharged into streams and carried to the ocean. In many caves, development has occurred at several levels, with current cavern forming activity occurring at the lowest elevation. The situation reflects the close relationship between the formation of major subterranean passages and the river valleys into which they drain. As streams cut their valleys deeper, the water table drops. As the elevation of the river drops, or as the water table drops, as the elevation of the river drops. Consequently, during periods when surface streams are rapidly down-cutting, surrounding groundwater levels drop rapidly, and cave passages are abandoned by the water, while while the passages are still relatively small in cross-sectional area. Conversely, when the entrenchment of streams is slow or negligible, there is time for large cave passages to form. So, wow, that's amazing. I really love the language of geology. These terms, these keywords like the undercutting, the what is it? The bedstone. What did they call it? The zone of saturation, the lines of weakness in the rocks, such as joints and bedding planes. I mean, I love that technical jargon, joints and bedding planes. I love that jargon because I can clearly visualize what a speaker is trying to convey. One of the wonderful things about geology are the terms, right, and definitions, how clear they are. I love it. I love that precise thinking. I love that detail. So anyway, I figured that we'd move on to the next segment of my presentation today. Yes, that is the question and answer period. Okay. Sometimes these questions are tough. I think I've landed upon a tough one. This is question number 157. What's someone's idiosyncrasy that really bothers you? So I'll say that question again. What's someone's idiosyncrasy that really bothers you? Well, an other person's idiosyncrasy that really bothers me. Well, there are a few, I guess. Here's one, I guess, that bothers me a little bit in people that I see sometimes. Unresolved problems, issues that remain unresolved for a long, long time. Now, it's also something that's really common, and so I don't know if I can say that I can be bothered by it necessarily. I mean, I recognize it, but here it is. It has to do with sort of the same old mindset that people use to address a problem. They might use, say, sadness. Maybe they are continually sad about something that's a fixed fact. I'm like this too. I mean, probably part of the reason it bothers me is because it reflects an aspect of my own personality that I don't care for. But, there are habitual ways to address issues that people use. And it represents, in my mind, a lack of creativity, right? A lack of using multi-theoretical perspectives. And, it's sort of people who get stuck maybe up against a wall or something, and they just can't work themselves around it. And it's a thinking problem, right? It's a creativity problem. I think that's what bothers me a little bit. But, I've got this problem too. I wish that I had the ability to remain flexible in my thinking and to not be overinvested in one perspective. Yeah. Here's another thing that bothers me a lot. When people exaggerate their problems. I mean, having a problem is bad enough, right? But then people go so far as to exaggerate the seriousness of the problem that they have to make it perceivably worse by the words that they choose to describe their problem. It's like they're magnifying and augmenting the problem that they have. And, you know, I'm guessing there's a lot of reasons people do that. You know, maybe they want the sympathy of others, or maybe they're just trying to clarify in their own mind about what the problem is. Maybe they're trying to teach others a lesson. I don't know. Or maybe they're trying to gain some prestige. Hey, look what I can endure. Look at how terrible this life situation is, and look how I'm just moving through it like nobody's business. You know, who knows what people's motivations are when they exaggerate the bad things that are happening around them. That's something I'm relatively impatient about, I suppose, when people exaggerate the negative things that happen to them. Let's see, what else is it that, what other idiosyncrasies of people that really bother me? You know, as I've grown older, I've become more tolerant of people's idiosyncrasies. So it's actually pretty hard for me to answer this question. I've talked about, you know, anti-intellectualism in the past. That's something that bugs me. I don't like any phrase that suggests that it's better that you don't know something. For me, strikes me as anti-intellectual, and I don't care for it. Any statement that suggests that ignorance is beneficial and useful bothers me a little bit. Stuckness kind of bothers me a little bit, that a person can have, say, sentimental feelings arise every year on an annual basis. You know, it was this year, last month, that this tragic thing happened, and because it's the anniversary of the tragic thing, I'm going to continue to think about it some more. You know, there is another thing, that this idiosyncrasy that bothers me a little bit. There's this idea, it's called the hydrologic theory of psychology, that suggests that in order to get over some kind of emotional trauma, that you've got to talk to somebody at length about the trauma for years and years and years. That is an idiosyncrasy that bothers me, where people, in my view, are mistaken for believing that they can only get over emotions by expressing them. Here's why. The reason is because I actually think that anytime you give energy to an issue or struggle with an issue, every time you think about that issue and maybe repeat that idea again and again, you're giving energy to it. And it's re-establishing that perspective or idea in your own mind. And in my view, it gets you more stuck. So it's not a remedy. I don't think that necessarily talking it out is a remedy. Although, you know, talking it out can be a remedy if you do some exploring and you're curious. But just taking a problem and repeating the narrative of the problem again and again and again, I think only serves to reinforce the problem and reinforce that narrative. Yeah, I'm a really big proponent of narrative therapy. Basically, it's this idea that how you tell a story, right? Your perspective, the meaning that a certain external event has, is what is the problem, right? And that, you know, that can trigger or be related to dysfunction. There's dysfunctional behavior that can arise around issues that tend to persist, issues that you give energy to. All right, next question. Question number 158. What's an idiosyncrasy or strange habit that I have? Okay. Well, it's kind of interesting. A moment ago, I was sharing this idea that a lot of the idiosyncrasies that bug me in other people, I notice in myself. and they bug me even more. So twisting it on its head like that, then that would mean anytime I persist in sort of giving energy to a negative thought or negative feeling, a feeling of dissatisfaction bothers me. That's an idiosyncrasy that I have. And yep, I think that's true. I've mentioned many times on my in my presentations that everything is a projection, and I definitely think that's the case. Any dissatisfaction I have with people surrounding me is a mirror, and it reflects a problem or an issue I have with my own behavior and my own thought process. All right, next question. Question number 165. What books are you reading these days? All right. Well, believe it or not, I've got my handy Kindle right here, so I can figure it out. So what's in my library lately? Okay, so one book that I'm really enjoying right now is called Act with Love, Stop Struggling, Reconcile Differences by Russ Harris. And it looks like I'm 92% of the way through that book. I definitely want to read that book again. ACT, Act with Love. ACT is an acronym for Acceptance and Commitment Therapy. It's one of my favorite therapies. Another book that I'm reading is called The Comprehensive ENFP Survival Guide. It's a book by Heidi Priebe. Now, I took the Myers-Briggs personality test a couple of months ago, and my results suggested that my personality type was ENFP. These are people who are extroverts, who are intuitive, perceptive, and are relatively non-judgmental. And I think that Myers-Briggs test did a really good job of typing my personality. I'm really pleased with the outcome. And so ever since, I have been interested in learning about how to better manage my own personality. And I've been reading books like this, the Comprehensive ENFP Survival Guide. Another book that I have is a cookbook I've been reading called 40 Favorite Impossible Pies, Main Dishes and Desserts Using Bisquick. So, I've told you in the past that I'm interested in cooking, and I've been using Bisquick as sort of a catalyst to do more cooking with flour. And I've been really loving that. Last night I made some cherry cobbler, and I also made some white rice. But anyway, these favorite impossible pies, I've made a couple impossible pies. I made a pumpkin impossible pie, and I made a cream cheese cheesecake pie. And I really like this idea of impossible pies. An impossible pie, if you didn't know, Emily, an impossible pie is first of all, it's a name that's Bisquick, the company Bisquick has developed to describe pies that don't have separate crusts. You see, when you make a pie, the first thing you do is you set the crust inside the dish. But an impossible pie doesn't have a crust. It's the pie itself serves as its own crust. It's so firm that it doesn't need any kind of bowl, if you will. It's firm enough. It's like a firm pie, right? It has its own integrity and doesn't need a crust. And so I've really been interested in this idea of impossible pies. I want to make like a burrito pie or a taco pie or a savory pie. Maybe I can make it out of soy, some kind of soy meat substitute. Looking forward to making more impossible pies. And so that's what this book's all about. It's just 40 impossible pie recipes. Here's another interesting book that I've been reading lately. It's called Clayton's Quaker Cookbook. being a practical such and such. So you may not know this about me, but I admire certain aspects of religion uh, that relate to what I call the Protestant work ethic. And I'm talking about the Quakers, the Mennonites, and people like the Amish. Quakers, Mennonites, Amish are really actually the pristine examples of what I like about these religious groups, because they so well demonstrate the power of productive work. I'm an advocate of productive work. And because I think, well, I think it's important. I love this idea of being productive. I love this idea of abundance and keeping busy and being energetic in the world. And to me, there's just something so virtuous about it, about that approach to life and that attitude about life. And so I do study the Quakers, the Amish, these Mennonites, because I want to be inspired. I want to be further inspired by their work ethic. To me, it's a wonderful gift to have such a work ethic. Now, one thing I'm not necessarily inspired by is their mythology, right? Their whole, I know they're inspired and motivated to be hard workers because at their base is this belief about, their beliefs about God that inspire this really amazing work ethic. And, I could appreciate that and enjoy that. But I'm not necessarily inspired by the ideas themselves. For me, it's all about the work ethic, right? It's all about the minimalism. It's all about the minimalism and the work ethic combined in a cultural and some kind of small society that supports one another. I guess I also like the idea of intentional communities. I love the idea of intentional communities, minimalism. I don't know. There's just so much. There's so much that can be said that is wonderful about these groups. That's not necessarily related to their mythology. And so, anyway, I'm reading a book called Clayton's Quaker Cookbook, and it's basically old-fashioned recipes, and basically habits that the Amish and the Mennonite women had in the kitchen. And that inspires me. I've got another book called Pennsylvania Dutch Cooking. And here's another book called Choice Theory, A New Psychology of, I think, Personal Development by William Glasser. And then there's another book I've got here, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. I've really been interested in Harry Potter lately. So anyway, these are the things that I've been reading. Okay. Here we go. So let's move on to the very next question. Question number 166, what allergies do you have? Okay. Turns out, thankfully, I do not have many allergies at all. I do have one allergy, though, that I'm acutely aware of during the spring. And that is I have hay fever. But thankfully, it's a mild condition. And quite often, it does not show itself. Certainly lately, I have not had bouts of allergic reactions because of, grasses and seeds in the air. Now, I say hay fever mainly because I don't know specifically what it is I'm allergic to. Like, I could be allergic to pine. I could be allergic to mustard seed. Who knows what I'm allergic to? But it's something that is in the air that I'm allergic to. And it's often during the spring, although sometimes it has happened in the wintertime, right after rains, I think, happen. Um, it's been a long time since I've had the stuffy nose and the running nose and the tingly palate and the sneezes of being allergic to something. So I'm so glad that I'm not allergic to something all year round. Like, I'm not allergic to pet dander, or I'm not allergic to cats or dogs or anything else that I know of. I'm not allergic to any medications that I know of, thankfully. So pleased that that's the case. Hopefully that continues for a long, long time. I'm not allergic to eggs or dairy or wheat or a lot things that a lot of people are allergic to. I don't have any kind of IBS. That is, any kind of bowel syndrome where my gut gets inflamed for any reason. I don't have Crohn's disease or anything like that. So thankfully, my immune system is in check and it's not overcompensating too much. And it's, it tends to be working. Like, I'm pretty much over that cold that I got last Sunday. Not yesterday, but the Sunday before that. So just so thankful that is the case. So, I get occasional hay fever. Next question. Question number 167. How tolerant a person are you? So I am exceedingly tolerant, and perhaps more tolerant than my own good. Yep. Sometimes I wish I weren't as tolerant as I am, but I am exceedingly tolerant. So on a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being the most tolerant, 1 being the least tolerant, I'm easily on the high side of tolerance, on the extreme high side, 8, 9, and maybe even 10. Why am I like this? Why am I so tolerant of the things around me? I do not know. It is something that is deep in my personality. And I believe it is something that has existed for decades. Mainly all my life, I've my mom delights in telling stories about how tolerant I was in the past. As a baby, as a boy, I've had it for a long, long time. I mean, my personality is very tolerant. And it probably relates to a lot of the philosophical stances that I hold today. It's my personality disposition that sort of makes it possible to me to be an advocate for peace, an advocate for pacifism, an advocate for veganism. It's probably that very patience and tolerance which makes all those positions possible. Yeah. So, at times I wish I was a little more intolerant because things might go a little better. It can be something of a disability, but you know what? I also think that funny thing is, I think it's also probably one of the major ingredients for how happy I am and how happy I can be every day. So, maybe I'm grateful for my tolerance and my patience because it makes a significant, substantial contribution to my daily happiness. If I was more intolerant than I am today, I probably wouldn't be as happy as I am today. So I guess that's the trade-off. There are some less desirable aspects of being very, very, very tolerant. And it's those, but there are also very desirable aspects of being very, very, very tolerant. So, you take the good with the bad. It's a trade-off. You can't experience extreme happiness without sort of being presented with some of the more undesirable aspects of patience. All right, so let's see. What's the next question? Question number 168. To what extent do others' beliefs influence you and why? Okay, well, there are some core ideas that that are pretty well established. For me, being as old as I am, having the philosophical background, having the background in psychology that I do, I can have pretty fixed attitudes about stuff. And so, in those with recognizing that, others' beliefs do not necessarily influence me strongly. But here's the flip side of that, though, is that because I recognize the subjective nature of belief, I can easily empathize with other people and their position. And that empathizing can get me to take seriously counter beliefs, beliefs that are in disagreement with my current beliefs. So I'm able to, in some sense, play both sides of the field. So I basically have the best of both worlds, where I'm fairly stable, but at the same time, I'm also able to be flexible. Yeah. Well, anyway, I'm going to wrap things up, Emily. And thank you for choosing to spend time with me. I really appreciate this quality time that we get to share together. I'm thankful that you get to know more and more about me every day. You get to learn about how I spend my time in recreation, playing video games at times, but rarely. You get to learn a little bit about the things that I find interesting and enjoyable, geology, for example. You get a little bit of insight into your history and our joint history, as I discussed how we both visited Carlsbad Caverns in southeastern New Mexico when you were a child, say 5 or 6 years old. I'm glad that you're getting some insight into your life at the same time that I am getting insight into my life. It's a win-win situation right now. And so, I'm just really pleased to be working with you, developing our connection, working shoulder to shoulder. I hope to continue to be an advocate for your needs and wants and desires. It's important to me that you get what you want. It's important to me that you express your needs. I want you to know that I'm eager to hear them, that I want to hear what your desires are, what your dreams and goals are for the future. I want to know what your wishes are. What you wish could be, all the benefits that you seek, all the things that you long for deeply and desperately. And even your mild longings, your mild, even lukewarm desires. I'm interested in knowing what they are. So I have this continual curiosity about what's going on with you and what's on your mind and what you're finding funny or what you're finding to be a problem. I have a continual curiosity about that. I want you to know that I think the world of you. That is, I admire you and appreciate you. I'm so glad you're going to school this morning, learning and visiting with your friends and the teachers who you love and who inspire you. And it just brings warmth and gladness to my heart that is the case. I'm so happy to sort of know that you are in a good place. And that, you and your family have enough money and you're doing so well that you're just becoming this independent, bold, beautiful, passionate woman that I know that you can grow into. And with that, I'm going to sign off and share with you my love. I love you. Peace.